August 30, BCE. Rome's army surrounds Alexandria. Inside the palace, the last queen of Egypt is planning something no one will see coming. Every textbook told you she died from a snake bite in despair. But look closely at her face. Does that look like a woman giving up? When Rome's soldiers entered her chamber, Octavian's most valuable trophy, the woman meant to walk in chains through Rome, was simply gone. Octavian had one plan for Cleopatra, to parade her through Rome in chains. That parade never happened, and that fact changes everything we thought we knew. There was a snake, there were figs, but there was no body, no bite mark they could confirm, and no one who actually watched her die. Every account of Cleopatra's death was written decades after she died, by men who were not in that room and who had political reasons to lie. Hollywood sold you a seductress. Ancient records describe something completely different. A scientist, a linguist, a chemist, and a woman who never needed to be rescued. Beneath the palace of Alexandria ran a network of secret passages. Archaeologists have found evidence of tunnels. Octavian's men searched for days and found nothing. Her tomb was never found. To this day, no archaeologist has confirmed its location. For Rome's greatest victory, that is a very strange loose end. What if Cleopatra didn't lose? What if everything Octavian told Rome and everything Rome told history was exactly what she wanted them to believe? By age 14, Cleopatra was already fluent in 9 languages, not because she was tutored, because she taught herself. That tells you everything about her mind. Her own family ruled Egypt for 250 years and never learned Egyptian. She was the first Ptolemy to speak directly to her own people. Ancient sources confirm she wrote treatises on poisons, cosmetics, and medicine. She wasn't dabbling, she was conducting research with the same precision as any scholar in Alexandria. The historian Plutarch wrote that her voice was like a many-stringed instrument. She could switch languages mid-conversation, and each listener felt she was speaking only to them. At 18, her own advisor sided with her younger brother and forced her out of power. She walked into exile with nothing except her mind. That was enough. Exiled with no treasury and no palace, she raised a private army from scratch in the Syrian desert. She was 21 years old and completely self-funded. The carpet story was not romance, it was a calculated security operation. She had to bypass her brother's guards and reach Caesar before he could be warned against her. She didn't seduce Caesar with beauty. She offered him Alexandria's grain supply, which fed Rome's army, and access to the greatest library of knowledge in the ancient world. She personally managed Egypt's economy, tax systems, grain distribution, trade routes. Ancient records show her correcting financial documents in her own handwriting. She trusted no one else with the numbers. Alexandria under Cleopatra was the wealthiest city on earth. Rome needed her grain, her trade routes, and her gold. She knew it, and that made her dangerous. While Octavian's army surrounded the palace walls, something was happening inside that his intelligence network completely missed. Cleopatra had been planning this for months, not weeks, months. Octavian's primary goal was Egypt's treasury. Ancient sources confirm he found it partially emptied. Someone had moved a significant portion before his soldiers ever reached the vault. She requested a personal meeting with Octavian. He agreed, believing he was in control. Ancient accounts suggest she spent the entire meeting watching him far more than speaking.
She confirmed what she already suspected. Octavian intended to display her as a trophy in his triumph parade. She had perhaps 4 days to execute her plan. Ancient Egyptian kefir blends contained frankincense, myrrh, and compounds we now identify as psychoactive. Cleopatra understood their effects precisely. She had been studying them for years as control tools. Before the palace was sealed, Caesarion, her 17-year-old son and rightful heir to both Egypt and Rome, was quietly sent east along ancient trade routes toward India. She ordered a mausoleum built and moved herself inside it voluntarily before Octavian could move her. She chose the location, the structure, and every detail herself. That matters. Every object found in that mausoleum was placed deliberately. The scene Octavian's men walked into had been designed, not discovered. She wrote the ending of her own story. An asp bite causes violent convulsions, extreme swelling, and a grotesque death over several hours. Romans reported finding her calm and composed. Those two facts cannot both be true. Forensic historians now argue she used a precise hemlock and opium compound, something she had studied for years, something that produces exactly the calm, composed death Romans reported finding.
When Cleopatra sailed to meet Mark Antony in Tarsus, she made him wait 2 days, then arrived on a barge so spectacular the entire city abandoned him to watch her. The barge carried burning kefir incense designed to drift on shore before she arrived. The crowd smelled her before they saw her. That was not an accident, that was engineering. Scent bypasses rational thought and hits the emotional brain directly. Cleopatra understood this 2,000 years before neuroscience named it. She used specific compounds to trigger awe and memory formation. Antony had organized a formal state banquet in his own honor. By the time Cleopatra's barge arrived, his entire audience had walked out to see her. He ate alone. She dropped the most valuable pearl in the ancient world into a goblet of vinegar and drank it. The message to every Roman at that table was unmistakable. I have more than you will ever spend. She knew calcium carbonate dissolves in acetic acid. This was not spontaneous extravagance. It was a rehearsed demonstration of scientific knowledge disguised as a party trick for generals. Ancient sources confirm she tested various poisons on prisoners to study their speed and painfulness. This was not cruelty. It was a personal security system built on exact knowledge. Every room she received guests in was pre-engineered. Temperature, lighting angle, scent density, sound absorption. Her advisors prepared each space using a written protocol she designed herself. Plutarch noted her speech had a musical quality that changed listeners' emotional states. Modern psychologists call this vocal pacing, the deliberate use of rhythm and tone to induce trust and calm. She combined chemistry, linguistics, psychology, economics, and stagecraft into a single unified system of power. No ruler before her had ever operated at this level of deliberate scientific precision. Within 12 months of Cleopatra's death, the cult of Isis had spread so deeply through Rome that the Senate passed emergency legislation 3 times trying to ban it. It kept coming back. Isis offered Romans something their own religion never did: a personal relationship with the divine, emotional connection, and the radical idea that a goddess could love individual people unconditionally. Roman soldiers who served in Egypt returned carrying Egyptian religion home inside them. Octavian discovered his own legions were wearing Isis amulets beneath their imperial armor. He had no answer for it.
Octavian erected Egyptian obelisks across Rome as symbols of his conquest. He didn't realize he was installing Egyptian sacred objects at the heart of his own empire for eternity. That obelisk stands in St. Peter's Square today. Every pope looks at an ancient Egyptian monument every single day. Cleopatra's Egypt never left Rome, it just changed its clothes. The seated mother nursing her divine child, that image existed in Egypt 3,000 years before Christianity. Historians now confirm early Christian artists directly adopted Isis iconography for the Madonna. She had herself carved into temple walls as Isis incarnate. This was not vanity. Across Egypt, Africa, and the Eastern Mediterranean, that made her literally a living goddess to millions. Executing Cleopatra publicly risked triggering religious uprisings across Egypt and the entire Eastern Empire. Octavian needed her neutralized, but he could not afford to make her a martyr.
She knew that. The calendar you use today traces directly to Julius Caesar's reform, which was built entirely on Alexandrian Egyptian astronomical calculations. Cleopatra's scholars gave the world its measurement of time. Octavian ultimately adopted the title of pharaoh in Egypt and incorporated Egyptian divine kingship into Roman imperial identity. The man who conquered Egypt ended up ruling like an Egyptian. She won. Rome recorded Caesarion's execution in a single vague line, with no witness names, no location, no body confirmed. Every other royal execution in this period has extensive documentation. This one has almost nothing. Caesarion was 17 years old and legally the son of Julius Caesar, which made him the single greatest threat to Octavian's claim to power in the entire Roman world. The eastern trade route from Alexandria to the Red Sea port of Berenice was ancient and well-traveled. Cleopatra's advisors knew it intimately. It led directly to India. That is not coincidence. Caesarion's tutor, Roden, was sent to escort him east. He reappeared in Alexandria just weeks later, alone, with no explanation recorded. Historians have never satisfactorily explained where he had actually been. Ancient Tamil Sangam literature references a foreign prince of Mediterranean origin arriving by sea around 26 BCE. The timing and route align precisely with Caesarion's known escape window from Alexandria. Archaeological evidence confirms regular direct trade voyages between Egyptian Red Sea ports and southern India. Roman coins from this exact period have been found in Tamil Nadu in significant quantities. At his triumph parade, Octavian displayed Cleopatra's image and Egypt's treasures publicly. He displayed no evidence of Caesarion's death whatsoever, which for Rome's greatest political threat is extraordinarily unusual. A public execution risked making Caesarion a martyr across Egypt and the East. A quiet disappearance with a vague official record gave Octavian deniability, and possibly Caesarion his life. Alexandria's trade network reached India for centuries before Cleopatra. She had diplomatic contacts there. It is entirely plausible she arranged Caesarion's reception years before she ever needed the plan. No confirmed tomb, no confirmed execution site, no body. Julius Caesar's only biological son simply vanishes from history at 17. And history never thought to look east for him.
Roman soldiers reported finding 3 women arranged in composed positions with no signs of struggle, no chaos, no overturned objects. That level of order after a violent death is forensically impossible. Charmian, dying, was still adjusting Cleopatra's crown when soldiers entered. A Roman soldier asked if this was well done. She answered, extremely well, and befitting a descendant of so many kings, then died. If all 3 women died from the same snake bite simultaneously, Charmian could not have been alive and conscious enough to adjust a crown. The timeline breaks down completely under examination. Octavian had posted guards specifically because he feared exactly this. Every delivery was searched. Getting a live asp past 4 trained Roman soldiers inside a fig basket stretches credibility beyond its limit.
An asp capable of delivering a lethal dose to 3 adults is not a small snake. It cannot coil invisibly inside a basket of figs small enough to pass a guard's inspection undetected. The ancient physician Galen reviewed earlier medical accounts and noted the body showed none of the typical physical signs of envenomation. He openly questioned the official cause of death in his writings. Romans described 2 small, neat puncture marks on her arm. An asp bite produces a wide fang wound pattern with tearing. 2 small, neat marks are consistent with a needle, not a snake. Forensic toxicologists reconstructing the case propose a hemlock, opium, and aconitine combination, which she had studied, which she had tested, and which produces precisely the composed, painless death Romans described finding. The Roman official's report contains one phrase historians keep returning to. He noted the marks, but added they could not confirm the cause. That uncertainty was never resolved and was quietly buried. Ancient sources record that Octavian's first response upon receiving the death report was not triumph. He immediately sent for physicians to attempt revival. That response is not how a victor reacts to expected news. Octavian couldn't parade Cleopatra in chains, so he paraded her image instead. A massive painted panel showing her dying romantically with a snake was carried through Rome before 1 million people. The suicide story solved 3 problems at once. It preserved Rome's honor, it prevented Cleopatra becoming a martyr, and it erased the embarrassing fact that his greatest trophy had vanished completely. Octavian funded Rome's greatest poets directly through his minister Maecenas. Virgil and Horace both produced work glorifying Octavian's victory over Cleopatra. State-funded art was Rome's most powerful propaganda weapon. Horace's ode praised Cleopatra for choosing death over captivity, framing her ending as noble and Roman. He turned Octavian's biggest embarrassment into proof of his enemy's ultimate respect for Rome. By reducing Cleopatra to a woman destroyed by love, Octavian erased the most dangerous truth, that she had outmaneuvered him politically, economically, and strategically at almost every turn for 20 years. Plutarch wrote his famous account of Cleopatra 130 years after her death, using Roman imperial sources. Sources Octavian's administration had controlled, curated, and shaped from the very beginning. He had no others. Shakespeare built Antony and Cleopatra directly from Plutarch in 1606. One playwright, using one compromised source, performed before millions across 4 centuries, locked Octavian's propaganda permanently into Western cultural memory. The 1963 Cleopatra film cost the equivalent of $300 million today and was seen by hundreds of millions worldwide, all of them watching Octavian's 2,000-year-old fabrication performed on the biggest stage ever built. Every version of Cleopatra's story, from Plutarch to Shakespeare to Hollywood, omits her medical writings, her economic management, her military campaigns, and her 9 languages. The erasure was total, and it was deliberate. If the death was fabricated, the snake was impossible, and the record was controlled, then everything Rome told us about Cleopatra came from the man who had the most to gain from her erasure.
The Library of Alexandria was not one building. It was an entire research district, housing up to 700,000 scrolls and the greatest concentration of human knowledge ever assembled in one place. In 240 BCE, Eratosthenes calculated Earth's circumference in Alexandria using shadow angles and geometry, accurate to within 1%. He did this 1,700 years before European explorers thought the Earth might be round. Aristarchus of Alexandria proposed the Sun was at the center of the solar system in 270 BCE, 1,800 years before Copernicus. Alexandria knew. The knowledge was buried when Rome burned the library. Hero of Alexandria built a working steam engine, a programmable cart, and the world's first coin-operated vending machine, all before 50 BCE. The Industrial Revolution was 17 centuries late to a party Alexandria had already thrown.
The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck, is a fully functioning analog computer built using Alexandrian mathematical principles around 100 BCE. Nothing of comparable mechanical complexity appeared again for 1400 years. Hypatia was Alexandria's last great mathematician and philosopher. In 415 CE, a mob dragged her from her carriage and murdered her. With her died the last living connection to Alexandria's scientific tradition. Alexandria's medical scrolls contained knowledge of surgical techniques, anatomical accuracy from actual human dissection, and pharmaceutical compounds that medieval European medicine would spend 1,000 years painfully rediscovering from absolute zero. Ancient records confirm Cleopatra contributed original research to the library's collections on medicine and cosmetic compounds. She was not a patron who funded others. She was a working researcher among equals. Julius Caesar accidentally burned overflow library scrolls stored at the harbor in 48 BCE during his own visit to Alexandria. Rome's first act in Egypt was destroying part of its greatest treasure. Alexandria under Cleopatra was humanity's single greatest concentration of knowledge, technology, and intellectual ambition. Rome didn't just conquer a queen, it ended an experiment in human potential that has never been repeated. In her final hours, Cleopatra was not weeping, she was not praying. Every account that strips away the propaganda describes the same thing. A woman completely at peace with a completed plan. Octavian wanted 5 things: the triumph parade, the full treasury, Caesarion publicly dead, the goddess neutralized, and Egypt's submission. Cleopatra denied him every single one, on her terms, on her timeline. Historians estimate a significant portion of Alexandria's royal treasury reached Indian trade partners before Octavian's soldiers secured the vault. He never publicly acknowledged the shortfall. Admitting it would have proven she outmaneuvered him. By dying in full royal regalia as Isis incarnate, she converted political defeat into religious martyrdom across 3 continents. Her power didn't end in that mausoleum. It simply changed its form and kept moving. Every monument Octavian built to celebrate his victory over Egypt was designed using Egyptian proportional systems, Egyptian divine symbolism, and Egyptian craftsmen. The conquered culture built the victory monuments of the conqueror. Alexandrian mathematics survived to Arabic scholars, reached Renaissance Europe, and forms the foundation of modern science. The knowledge chain from Cleopatra's library to your smartphone has never actually been broken. Every woman who wielded intellectual and political power after Cleopatra did so in a world she had proved it was possible to inhabit. She was the proof of concept. All of them knew it. The asp was impossible, the wounds were wrong, the treasury was moved, the sun escaped, the record was controlled. Every piece of evidence points in the same direction. This was not a defeat, this was a plan. Ancient Alexandria lies partially beneath the Mediterranean today. Its palace, its harbor, its royal quarter, all underwater. Archaeologists have found it. It never disappeared, it was just waiting to be looked for. She did not lose. She looked east, she moved her pieces, she wrote her ending, and she made sure that 2,000 years later, we are still talking about her. Only her. If you enjoy real history that feels unreal, subscribe and like the video so you don't miss the next story. Thank you.